So what we're going to do is create some planes in here and then put these images on there to reference from. So the first thing to do would be to right click and save image as, and just go through and save each of these images to your project folder wherever you're working from. And I've just saved them into this course folder, and you'll see that I've got the 4 images. And I'm not going to go too much into detail about materials. I've got plenty of information on that elsewhere. So I'm just going to press M on the keyboard, and that's going to open up the material editor. You can also access it from this top toolbar up here. And you might be in Slate Material Editor. And again, because we're not going too in depth with materials, I'm just going to change to Compact Material Editor. And in Windows Explorer, I'm just going to right click on, we're actually going to use this front image, so right click on that and go to Properties and Details. And we can see the dimensions are 2000 by 1200. And the longest edge, 2000, corresponds to the longest edge of this image. So back in 3ds Max, I'm going to create a plane. And we just need one width and length segment. And you'll see we can change the length and height. So I'm going to change the length to 1200 and the height to 200. And you'll see that's going to look massive, but we just want to get the aspect ratio correct for this image. And then in an empty material slot, it doesn't really matter what you're using, because we're just using 3ds Max. Let's just use a standard material because everyone should have that. And I'm just going to drag and drop this front image into the diffuse. And you'll see that's now on our material swatch. And I'm just going to drag and drop that onto our object. And you'll see that we can't actually see the image on there until we hit Show Shaded Material in Viewport. And there we can see our image in our viewport. So now we can rotate, and I've just right clicked and gone to rotate. There's a few ways you can get to move, rotate and scale, and I'm in the habit of kind of right clicking and finding them here. You can also access them up here, or you can use W, E or R on the keyboard. But I'm in the habit of right clicking, and I mean that's how I'll be doing it, but it's up to you how you want to do it. And you'll see we want to rotate that by 90, but it's not really snapping. I mean, I can eyeball it to 90, but it's not exactly 90 degrees. If I go to the left viewport, you'll see it's kind of off. So we're going to need to use angle snaps. So I've clicked that to turn it on, and if you right click, we can take a look at these settings, and the angle is snapping at 5 degrees. So that's cool. So I'm just going to Control Z to undo that, and I'll rotate that by 90. You can see that that is locked on to 90 exactly. So press P, Z on the keyboard, F3 to go back to the shaded view, and we can see our sofa's in, but it's really big. So what I'm going to do is scale it down to match our purple box here, as that is our reference box. We can actually delete these 3 boxes, so I'm holding Control and I just selected them individually. I'm going to hit delete. Select our reference plane, scale that down. I'm going to go into the front view. If you find this grid distracting, you can hit G on the keyboard and that will turn it off. It can be quite handy to just see where our ground plane is, which is this darker line. So I'm just going to scale this and move it so it's as wide as our reference box. So I'm going to turn off the grid, and if I click our reference box and hit Alt X, it's going to go into X-ray mode, which means we can see through this object. If you're not seeing that, you may need to right click on your object and go to Object Properties, and it might be on layer, and if you just click that by object, it will go to see through. Just going to move that across. And now let's line up our legs with the ground. So this is our ground and we want our legs to line up. So I'm going to pull that down, and we can see on our reference box, this is the top of the cushions, and that kind of lines up quite well, and the top of the armrest as well has lined up quite nicely. We've got to obviously take into account the perspective of this and the angle, but I'm quite happy with how that reference image is sitting against our box. If you ever need to improve the quality of the image in your viewport, you can go to configure viewports, and you'll see here in textures you can change this. So you could turn this up to 2048 and hit apply, and it would increase the quality of the image. Obviously the quality of the image you downloaded should be taken into account, but we can work from this. This is quite good at 1024. So the things to remember from this class is we need dimensions and to work to real world scale. The edit poly modifier lets us edit verts, edges and polygons. You can set up your own frequently used modifier buttons. You can snap to objects and angles. You can ring, select and connect using the functions in the edit poly. You can show materials in viewport, and the dark grid line is the ground.